So I know, Fee, you grew up there in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, who did you really look up to musically when you were growing up?
Actually, I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona. We left Omaha when I was about 5, I guess. So I don't really have much of a memory of that. But I grew up in Scottsdale, and my mother was a singer for when she was young. She was a singer in big bands, and back then they used to just come to town and pick up a singer, and everybody knew the standards, and so we always listened to music in our house, and kind of in those early days it was mostly musicals, mm-hmm. soundtracks to musicals, and it really kind of I listened to like Sound of Music and Music Man and West Side Story and all those musicals, and we had I was really into musicals, and I did a lot of them in high school. I did a lot of musicals, and kind of lived in the theater arts department mostly. But I guess the Beatles pretty much changed everything. The Beatles changed my life pretty much. When I was the Beatles came out when I was in high school, and I just lost it completely. It just changed everything. And from then on, I started singing, and I started wanting to be in a band, and I actually auditioned for a couple of bands when I was in high school, and failed on both of them.
Oh no!
Yeah, I don't know why. I was a good singer, and I was in all these singing groups in school, and these like the varsities. It was called the Scottsdale Singers. It was like a singing group, and we'd do all this really complicated, Handel's Messiah, and all this kind of Baroque to Bach, all this really complicated music, and we had a great director, an incredible theater director, which was really formative, in my early years. And the guy was really, really amazing, and he just busted me constantly busting me. And one day I went into his office, and I said, his name was Joe Esley, and I said, Mr. Esley, why are you always on me, man? You're always on my case, constantly. And he says, you got something, man, and if I didn't think you could handle it, I wouldn't I'd ignore you.
Right.
If I didn't think there was something happening there, I would ignore you. But you have something happening, and you have to develop it, and you have to work hard. And so, I did. So I worked really hard and did a bunch of plays and, all kinds of singing. And he had a singing group outside of school where we would go to singing competitions in the state of Arizona, and compete with other singers, just not necessarily high schoolers, just all ages of people.
How did you meet up with the other members of the band, the Tubes? Was it a combination of two different bands?
Yeah, it was. Roger Steen had a band called the Red, White, and Blues Band, and he had a trio, and Bill Spooner had a band called the Beans, and he had a quartet. And I ended up Rogers, and they were both Phoenix bands, and I had seen them play, for years, and they played all the clubs around town, and everybody was in 6 different bands, I became friends with Roger and Prairie, and in Roger's band, and Prairie got a scholarship to San Francisco Art Institute, and so he decided that he was going to move to San Francisco and take advantage of this free college, and so Prairie moved to San Francisco, and Prairie said, I'm moving to San Francisco, and Roger said, Prairie is such a great drummer, we don't want to lose you, so we're going to move the whole band to San Francisco. And so that's what happened. They decided to leave town and move to San Francisco, and they had known me because they liked to come up to the mountains to hang around and go swimming naked in the pool with all the hippies. And so they asked me to go with them. I started as a roadie. I started as Roger and Prairie's roadie.
And so, how did you guys come up with the name The Tubes?
We just, we had everybody had the assignment to come up with names. So we had a huge list of names that, we couldn't decide on which name. We were going to be the Gas Men, and we were going to be Larry and Mary was somebody's name, I remember. Gosh, we had so many weird names. And and one of the names was Tubes, Rods, and Bulbs. Was actually the original name was Tubes, Rods, and Bulbs, and they are different kinds of cells in the eyeball. Okay.
Interesting.
And so we picked that. And we decided that it was too long, and they ended up we'd be TRB before long. So we just shortened it to the Tubes. And we thought, and we were doing visual stuff then. Even in the beginning, I was doing costumes and doing dopey characters, and we were trying to enhance our songs with visuals. And so we thought, well, this is good. Tubes, boob tubes, fallopian tubes. It kind of meant a lot of different things.
Right. Right. So, I mean, during the mid to late 70s, I know you guys released great classics like Don't Touch Me There, White Punks on Dope, Prime Time. Then I know in 81, you guys released your first album of the 80s, the Completion Backward Principle. I love that album. How did you guys come up with the idea for the tune Don't Want to Wait Anymore?
Don't Want to Wait Anymore was actually, I wrote the lyrics. It was, about an old girlfriend. Vince wrote the music. Vince Welnick wrote the music, and that was one of the first songs we played for David Foster when he came, because we had just moved to Capitol Records, and, we really needed to get, to get on the radio, and because we got released from A&M Records because we were too weird and couldn't manage to actually break radio. So nobody really wanted to sign us, and then there was a guy at Capitol, who had some faith, and he said, "Man, I think you guys could really, if you just got the right guy, you could definitely get on the radio and have some hits and have a record company get behind you."
Right.
And so his name was Bobby Columbi. He's actually used to be the drummer of Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Oh, okay.
And he was an A&R guy at Capitol, and he brought in David Foster. And we actually tried a lot of guys, but David Foster walked in, and that was one of the first songs. He said, "Well, play me your tunes. Play me what you have." And so we played. We had about 5 or 6 or 8 tunes. We played him Amnesia, and we played Mr. Hate, and we played Don't Want to Wait Anymore, and it was actually a lot. Well, not a lot different, but appreciably different, the original version.
Mm-hmm.
And he went, "Wow, this song is awesome," and he was saying right away, "This is going to be the first single."
Nice, and I know the album, the Completion Backward Principle, was a very, very successful album for you guys, spawning 3 hit singles, including that one. Another great track that I love, and I love the beat to it, Talk to You Later. How was that tune conceived?
Talk to You Later was... I actually wrote it with a friend of mine, Steve Lukather from Toto. We were looking for a rock and roll song. David wanted an up-tempo rocker to go along, with the ballad, because everybody wanted to release ballads then. I don't know why. It was Journey influence, I guess. Mm-hmm. And we weren't crazy about the idea of releasing a ballad first, but because we weren't ever known as a ballad band. We were a rock and roll band, and we didn't really do big sappy ballads, and but the record company said no, that's what we want to do, and so David said, I know that's what they're going to say, but we need a rock song to get on the rock chart and keep the rock image going, and so he had worked with Steve a lot because Steve was like the LA session guy. He was the guy. He was the number one guitar player, session guy. He did all the sessions. And Foster had worked with him a lot on various other bands, Toto, and just everybody under the sun, used him. And he said, why don't you and Steve and I sit down together and see if we can't come up with something. And so we did, and we came up with Talk to You Later.
And then next on the hit list for you guys was a great tune called She's a Beauty, produced by David Foster. How did you guys all collaborate on that tune? And, that was a huge hit for you guys.
Yeah, that was pretty much our biggest song. I think it went to number 2, as I recall. We never had a number 1 song on Billboard magazine, but I think it went to number 2. And again, I wrote it with Luke. Me and Luke and Foster wrote it. Everybody contributed, though, really. Roger came up with the title, and Prairie did the drums, and pretty much everybody was into that. You know, we knew right away as soon as we had started the song, we knew that this. It's funny, you know. Sometimes you can really tell. Sometimes you can really tell. You just something about it. You just go, wow, this is it. This is. I remember when I wrote "Talk to You Later." The day we wrote "Talk to You Later," and we recorded it. I came home that night, and I lived in San Francisco at the time, and I, you know, I live in L.A. now, but I was staying at our manager's house in the valley in Toluca Lake. You know, he and his wife and his kids. He had 3 kids, and they all lived at this really nice house in Toluca Lake. And I came home. I was staying there, and I had a car, and I came home at about 2:30 in the morning, and I was just whacked, completely jazzed out of my mind. And I woke everybody up, and I said, "Ricky, man, you got to hear this song." You know, what did I have? A cassette. I probably had a cassette tape of the tune, you know, of the rough of the tune. And I woke him up, and I said, "Man, you have to listen to this. This is a hit. I know this song is a hit. I'm just complete. I'm sure of it." And he thought so too. He went, "Yeah, man, this is great. This is going to change everything."
And another great tune from another great album from you guys, Outside Inside, a track called "Tip of My Tongue." One of the girls here at the radio station, it's one of her favorite songs. So I got to ask you about that. How did you guys come up with that particular tune?
Well, it's kind of, I don't know if yeah, I'm sure you've heard it. The lyrics are a little suggestive, shall we say?
I think that's why she liked it, Fee. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, we had written the verses to the song. We were working here in L.A. with Foster again at a studio called the Complex here in L.A. We had written the verses, you know, and you know, it's about oral sex. I mean, okay, and it's pretty obvious,
right?
And we couldn't figure out how the chorus went, and David tried, and we tried 6 or 8 different kinds of melodies for the chorus, and we had a chord progression that we liked, but we just couldn't seem to come up with the right melody. Earth, Wind, and Fire were in the studio down the hall, and you know, before David Foster produced the first Tubes album, he came from producing Boogie Wonderland with Earth, Wind, and Fire. Mm-hmm. And so that was the record he did right before us. And he wrote After the Love Is Gone and, you know, had big time. So he said, you know, who could come up with the perfect melody for this chorus? And what? Who? The singer for...
the lead guy. The lead guy.
White.
I know. I can see him.
Maurice White.
That's it.
Gosh. Rain Fade. Wow. Not enough alcohol yesterday. Maurice was down the hall, and David said, you know, Maurice could come up with this chorus in a heartbeat. And we went, oh, okay. He goes, but we can't play him the verses. We can't play him the lyrics because he's very religious. And if he knew what the song was about, there's no way he's going to work on it with us. And we had, we had the lyrics for the chorus, you know, my heart beats, but the words play on the tip of my tongue. So we went to Maurice, and we said, you know, this is the tune. It's kind of about a guy who we said it's about a guy who can't get the words "I love you" out, you know, and so he went, oh, okay, and we never played him the verses. And he just never played. I mean, we played him the verses without any vocal on it, mm-hmm. And he came up with it. He came up with the chorus, the melody for the chorus.
Perfect.
And you know, in like, the guy's brilliant. You know, mm-hmm. It was so cool, and he just came up with it in a second.
So, what are you guys currently working on? I know you guys are on tour. Are you working on any solo projects yourself, or just with the Tubes exclusively, or what's going on?
No, I am. Actually, I'm working on another solo record with Richard Marx. He's my buddy, and I've written lyrics for him for years and years, and 30 years I've been writing with Richard.
Wow.
And, I have songs on every record he ever did, and had a few hits. I think we had 4 hits of tunes that I wrote lyrics for, and so we're working on that, and we've been working on it I have about 5 songs done. You know, we work on it whenever I'm not busy, and whenever he's not busy, which is never.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we've been working on it for a couple of years. And but he's got a studio in his house in Chicago, and so when I'm in the neighborhood, I go by, or usually, once or twice a year, we go to visit and hang out. And the tubes are. We've got some stuff in the can that we've had for a while, and we just kind of, I don't know. Nobody's really interested in giving us a deal. So we just, every once in a while we work. Roger's got a little studio at his house, so we kind of slowly put stuff together, and someday we'll put out our own thing probably.
Right.
But our new show for this year has been fun, and which is what we'll do down there in at the Coach House again, and it's kind of our tribute to La Dolce Vita, the movie, and a lot of times we kind of do themes. We did a whole show about the spaghetti westerns, the Sergio Leone westerns, the 3 Clint Eastwood trilogy, Italian westerns, and we did a whole Tubes Wild West show a couple of years ago, all kind of based with those kind of musical themes, and a lot of funny western songs and sarcastic western songs, and then last year we did kind of the Fallen Preacher. We did Elmer Gantry. I mean, this stuff is really obscure. People don't know what the hell we're doing. Who? You're what? The guy from Burt Lancaster in Elmer Gantry? And they have no guy. Yeah. Don't you remember that? Don't you remember? No. Well, okay. Sorry.
That's funny. November 25th, the Tubes are going to be performing live at the Coach House in San Juan Capistrano. For more information, you can always go to their website at thetubes.com. Fee Waybill, thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of the 80s experience tonight.
Oh, well, thanks, JJ. It was my pleasure. Okay. I appreciate the help.